Alright, let's go ahead and create a virtual machine, but this time we're gonna do with an ARM template and not with a PowerShell. Of course, we'll be using PowerShell to call the ARM template, which is right here in this particular URL, which is deploy a simple Windows VM. You can either click on deploy to Azure, which will take me to a form where I just have to click on submit button and it will do the deployment for you. There's no fun. So we will go to the GitHub and look at this JSON here, which we did in the previous video, that it will create a virtual machine of the following configuration. So the virtual machine OS will be 2016 data center. The allowed values here, so if you do not like 2016 data center and your purpose is to create, let's say, 2019 data center, you can take this out and just paste it here. Of course, it needs to be done in your Notepad++. Then there are other variables like these: the storage account name, network card, address prefix of the network card, subnet in which the virtual machine will be hosted, the public IP address, the virtual machine name. As you see, there are certain things that can be modified, but of course it needs to be done in Notepad++ and not in this web page. And let's go ahead and do it now. So what I will do is click on raw and copy this whole content. Then I will open Notepad++ and open a new tab, paste it here. Now I can go ahead and modify a few values here. Like I said, let's say you do not want 2016 data center, you like 2019 data center maybe. So I'll just copy this part carefully and paste it in between these double quotes, right? That's it. Now look at other values. Maybe you're looking for class C IP address, so I'll change this to 192 address prefix here, and then put the same thing for subnet prefix as well. The name of the virtual machine is simple VM, which I'll change it to Windows Web Server, something like that. Yeah. So basic modifications are of course possible. Here the storage type is standard underscore LRS, which is local redundancy services. So we haven't discussed about storage accounts yet. What storage accounts are, different kinds of replication options available, we'll talk about them later. But yeah, you can definitely modify the type of storage, how it replicates, public IP address, do you want that to be static or dynamic? Well, there are a lot of variables that can be modified as you scroll down in the page, right? If you look at the VM size, it is standard underscore A2. You can find out what are the VM sizes available on the Azure web page in the virtual machine section, then put that particular VM size here. There are a lot of values that can be modified, but we'll keep it simple for now, and let's see if this can be deployed. I will save it somewhere in my temp directory and then call this file using PowerShell. Let's save it. So this goes onto my desktop, and I'll create a folder called ARM templates and click on open and click on open. Now that file is saved. Now if I go to my directory there on the desktop, I will see that the file new3.txt is there. So I'll rename this as deploying new VM.json. Yeah, that makes it more appropriate. Now I will launch PowerShell and call this using the new-az resource group deployment commandlet. Before I do that, I have to say login. I have to log into the Azure account, so that will be login-az account. Okay, so authentication should be done. So I'll go back to the portal and see what will be the syntax of executing or calling this JSON, it will be something like this: new hyphen Azure resource group deployment hyphen resource group name, and the template URI in this case will not be the URL, it will be my file which is in my local computer. So I'll copy all of this from here and go back to PowerShell and just paste it. So that will be new hyphen Azure, that will be new hyphen AZ resource group deployment in a resource group called, I have a resource group called dev underscore IT or prod underscore IT or something like that, but you can of course get the AZ resource groups using PowerShell. Let's see how many resource group I got. I've got 3 resource groups. Yeah, so let's deploy it in prod IT. So resource group deployment, and the name of the deployment, just give it some name, doesn't matter. It's a new VM deployment, and that will go in a resource group called prod underscore IT. All right, and the template URI is located on my computer, the local computer, so which is this particular path, right? See users, wherever you have kept it, and then just do a tab completion. Well, there's a space out here, so that's why it needs to go in double quotes, right? So I'll put this guy in double quotes. Yeah, and that's it. Let's hit enter and see what happens. There you go. Remember the variables and parameters section that I was talking about. Variables and parameters. Now, variables are something that will be reused again and again, whereas parameters are something that will appear as a pop-up. Now, these are parameters, right? So let's say I'll type root admin. That will be the username for this computer, or the administrator for this computer. Let's type the password. Good. DNS label suffix, what is a domain in which it will be joining? I'll just give it name like alpha beta gamma.local or something, and hit enter. And now it's scanning through the entire script. There we go, we got some errors. Errors are good. Gotta troubleshoot these errors. Number one is that is not valid according to the validation procedure. The second error is that the domain name label alpha beta g is invalid. It must conform to the following expressions. Okay, and then the deployment failed. Okay, so this one is pretty easy to fix because it does not need a local, that is a prefix, that is a suffix. It is only asking for a prefix value, and we have added a suffix value there as well. So let's give it a shot again. Root admin, password, DNS label, domain, yeah, alpha beta g, and hit enter. Now let's wait for a minute. Okay, so far so good, no errors. So the only error here was that alpha beta tag.local is a fully qualified domain name, whereas it is asking for just the prefix. As we discussed earlier, PowerShell is not only easy to learn, but also when you get error messages like this, it gives you the solution right there on the screen and tells you where to fix. And these messages are pretty much logical in nature. Like we saw here, the logic is it's a fully qualified domain name, whereas this guy is asking only for a prefix, and I typed suffix as well. All right, well, it looks like it is doing something. So what we can do in the meantime is go back to the Azure portal using GUI, the graphical user interface, and then go to that resource group to see what's happening there. Is there a deployment happening or something going on? So I will launch portal.azure.com quickly. Then go to my resource group, and under deployments, I'll see what's happening. See, new VM deployment. This was the name of the Azure resource group deployment. That's the name we gave, right? That's the name we gave. So this is getting deployed, which is good. Now if I click on it further, it will tell me what exactly has been created so far and what is pending. So a public IP is created, a virtual network is created, virtual network card is created. On the overview, you will see what has been created so far. We do not see a virtual machine yet, so the work is still in progress. Give it some time and it should create all the resources that are required for the virtual machine to be ready. It first creates the dependencies because a virtual machine cannot exist without a hard disk, without a network or a network card. So it creates those dependencies first. Then once a virtual machine is created, it then connects these individual components to it. So storage account, virtual network, public IP, and network interface are basic elements of a virtual machine. Virtual machine should be the last one to get created, and that's exactly what it's doing, right? So let's give it some time. A virtual machine usually takes about 4 to 7 minutes to be fully provisioned. And once it is ready, we should be able to see that under the virtual machine section. Right now it is empty, but should be published anytime there. I'll pause the video for a minute and resume once the virtual machine is ready. Resuming the video from where we left, here if you see there's an error that occurred during the VM deployment. Now if I click on error details, it says that the Windows computer name that we used is more than 15 characters. I can see the similar error message on the PowerShell screen as well. So if I go back and then look at the error message in detail, it says Windows computer name cannot be more than 15 characters long. So revisiting the JSON here and looking at my computer name, I see that the computer name that was used is probably more than 15 characters. I did not count it, but it may be the case. So I can't find it at this time, so just do a Control F and search for name. There you go. Now this is simple Windows VM, and I think this is an incorrect JSON file I'm looking at. I'll open my file, which is right here. Okay, now if I search for the name, there you go. The name is probably more than 15 characters, looks like. So I'll remove the Windows thing and just keep web server as a name. Save it and go to PowerShell and execute this one more time. Alright, admin username, root admin, password, and DNS prefix. So we are just fixing the errors one after another and also looking at the power of PowerShell to see how we can deploy it and how the error messages are easily understood, comprehended. So that way PowerShell does not show complex errors on the screen. It just makes things easier by pointing out to the real problem instead of people or the administrators looking around logs, events, and troubleshooting it. Let's wait another minute for this to deploy, and if there are any errors, we'll troubleshoot them together. I'll pause the video for now and resume once it is ready. So looks like the script got executed here and the output is there, and I do not have any red marks or any error messages on the screen. It shows me that the provisioning state is succeeded and it's incremental in nature. The following attributes have been set properly. Well, let's go to the graphical user interface on portal.azure.com and check this. Now, okay, this is succeeded. Under overview, I'll have the virtual machine as well this time. The web server is ready. So under virtual machine section, I should have the virtual machine which has the public IP address and a private IP address too. The private IP address must be in 192 class C series. Okay, so as you see here, that's the public IP and the private IP address just as we specified in the JSON template. So what we noticed is that we really do not have to go through the graphical user interface to create resources. You can create it with PowerShell, call a JSON using PowerShell, and do wonders with that. Now we just created a virtual machine, but we can create an entire infrastructure or a whole data center in Azure with ARM templates. That is the power of ARM templates. What you need to do is spend time on writing the JSON, authoring the JSON. Once it is ready with no errors and optimized properly, then you're just ready to deploy the data center n number of times repeatedly.